curriculum. Importantly, the school would not have been created without the advocacy of black politicians in Detroit. I come from two different communities. However, I would be remiss not to acknowledge that my black ancestors came from indigenous peoples. I don't know the particular tribe. That information was lost because of slavery. I know about the indigenous heritage of only part of myself. While it might be impossible to find out my personal African indigenous heritage, I can at least acknowledge the larger history of indigenous Africans, my heritage. A major focus of this book is not only to analyze Black American and indigenous relationships, but also to recover and acknowledge the indigenous roots of people of African descent. I am not claiming that those people are indigenous to what is now the United States, nor do I think black folks should be so invested in what would be the equivalent of a white nationalist project such as the United States. We should be more visionary than that. However, U.S. indigenous peoples should also help think through the anti-blackness that exists in their community and how they might, as Canadian indigenous Mississauga Anishinaabe writer and musician Leanne Batasmasak Simpson suggests, make room for indigenous people on their land. When I have traveled the country to discuss my research, I often get two versions of a comment or question about identity. First, a person of Black American ancestry might share that they have Cherokee blood in them, maybe Blackfeet. Or someone, usually a young person, will ask me how I deal with being both black and indigenous. I tell them that, for me, it wasn't a contradiction being black and indigenous. While others questioned me, my family didn't question or police my identity. I did experience an instance of being questioned by others, or identity policing, when I was a graduate student, attending an academic conference. I was at the hotel lobby, recognized a peer from my own graduate institution, and saw that they were with a group of other Native people. I'm sure I gave everyone some dap, exchanged a fist-pound greeting, and then one of the people, from a southwestern U.S. tribal nation, asked, "Why are you wearing those earrings?" I replied, "'Cause I like them." They responded, "Where did you get them?" "From a powwow," I snapped back, after quickly concluding that they wondered why a black person had adorned themselves with native earrings. This anti-black exchange made me angry, if not insecure. Still, I never felt comfortable in my intellectual knowledge of black and indigenous relations until graduate school, because it was there that I was able to delve into the research and really read. I carved out time to think about my identity and how I wanted to help change the intellectual game of how we approach Afro-Indigenous history. Graduate school offered me 5 years to reflect on myself and learn how to be me, my full Afro-Indigenous self. My quest in this book is to recover histories, reorient our understanding of historical events and peoples, and project what a present and future idea of Black and Indigenous solidarity might look like. We need a new way of talking about these relationships. In documenting encounters between Black and Indigenous peoples, I have focused the majority of my examples in this book in unexpected ways and places. In fact, the whole book could be considered unexpected. I challenge the very notion of what we know about these relationships. I am only mildly interested in writing about the relationship between, for example, the 5 tribes and enslaved Africans, though I'm sure that's what many will expect. The topic of enslavement and dispossession in the 19th century dominates the books on African Americans and Native Americans. However, if we are to build a shared Afro-Indigenous future on stolen indigenous land and recover the indigenous roots of the ancestors of stolen indigenous Africans, then it will require we find underexplored histories, rethink accepted histories, and survey solidarities and tensions, and also imagine how the world might look after white supremacy and settler colonialism have been dismantled. I have not written this book as a historical narrative, where the author's voice is almost entirely mute. Throughout the pages I offer commentary here and there so that you, dear reader, and I can have an in-text conversation. Kyle T. Mays, Ph.D., Atlanta and Los Angeles. Introduction. Thousands of volumes have been written about the historical and social relations existing between Europeans and the native peoples of the Americas and between Europeans and Africans, but relations between Native Americans and Africans